All right, so hopefully everybody's well fed, had a little bit of bio break, and you're coming refreshed to our afternoon sessions. This is just a short transition session before we get started with our actual working sessions this afternoon. So thank you, everybody, and thank you for coming and joining us. I'm Retsina Meyer, and I'm part of the clinical programs team here at CVB, and have been working with the brain trauma blueprint for a little over a year and a half now. Do you think some more folks are coming? Where's Nicole? All right. I do want to get started so that we can get to our sessions upstairs. So we will repeat some of this in those sessions just to make sure people are on the same page. So like I said, Retsina Meyer, I've been with CVB for over 3 years and been working on the Brain Trauma Blueprint initiative for about a year and a half. And what brought me to the Brain Trauma Blueprint initiative was a desire to have impact, to see research not go from bench to bookshelf, but to go from bench to bedside. And I saw this program as an actionable way to elicit that impact. So there is a saying, I'm not sure where, when I went to the Google and tried to figure out the origins, but it says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. But we would like to go far quickly, so let's make a map. So if this is the map of where we are today, 3 approved diagnostics, 0 qualified biomarkers, no FDA-approved therapeutics, we need to start envisioning where we might want to go. To make a map, we have to explore the unknown, make it known, take the opaque and make it transparent. Now we could wander around, see what we bump into, or we can make a goalpost. We can create a destination. And I think we've spent the morning session defining what that destination might look like. So it's a future map where we have topography and star maps and ocean maps and everything coming together in that systems biology approach to give us personalized disease-modifying therapeutics for TBI. Now, there was this old cartography shortcut that when you didn't know what was beyond a certain boundary, you said, maybe there's some dragons here. So as we're entering into a space with dragons, we need to start with collecting some guides to help us fight those dragons. And so that brings me to our scientific planning committee, who was briefly introduced this morning, but I do want to take a moment and just, again, thank them for all their contributions over the last 6 months. So if everybody could please. Thank you. Thank you. Our scientific planning committee has joined us in January and has been working in their free time to help design not only this meeting, but really the work product that we want to get out of this meeting, and this overarching idea of what is the state of the field and how will we map that path forward into an age of precision medicine for TBI. The idea of precision medicine in TBI is quite large. So the first task for our group was to create some guideposts, so to create some steps that we would take, or as he was saying earlier, the bites we might take first from that elephant or watermelon. So we broke down the paths to treatment into 6 really important pillars to help support that. The first of which is epidemiology of the chronic effects of TBI. So in this domain, which is represented in the summary documents that you have, we were asking the question, what are the chronic sequelae of TBI? How are they quantified? How large is the population, and how large is the burden expressed as our societal burden or familial burden? This domain kind of provided a really good starting point for all the domains, and so we don't have a breakout session specifically for that, but it is represented, and there are representatives from the epidemiology field in each of your rooms today. The next domain is preclinical and translational sciences. So we wanted to ask, what can we learn from these preclinical models, and what can this add to our clinical development knowledge. The next breakout session is patient phenotypes and biotypes, where we were embracing the heterogeneity of that patient population in order to think about subtypes in treatment development and how different patient subtypes might inform that treatment development. And I'm going very briefly through these because after me, the SPC will join me on stage and will present each of these with a slightly more in-depth review and then a very in-depth review in your breakout rooms. And of course, you've all read this amazing document that they've written. So the next up was biomarker development, thinking about how biomarkers advance treatment development, and if they're not informing treatment development, how they might. Clinical trial design, so the pieces of design that may have best practices already and those that do not have best practices and that we need to sort of inform those. And then finally, implementation science, which we did have that fantastic panel earlier this morning, but how do we change the practice to follow those best practice guidelines? And I think as you go through each of these sessions, you're going to find there's quite a lot of overlap between the domains. And that's fine. Again, embracing this idea that we're all contributing novel and diverse lens. So we have our guides. We have our guideposts. Let's do some exploring. Well, before we can explore, we need to know what the known world is. And to do that, our scientific planning committee then identified an additional panel of experts to help us increase the diversity within each of those domains and increase the clinical or preclinical or the different types of expertise that we're looking at each of those domains. With the scientific planning committee and the extended science committee, we now have our 6 domains, and we set out to create that map of the known world, the state of the science summaries. And I was going to introduce the process briefly in order to inform you where we're at in the process and what your role is in that process. So first, we gathered the committees, identified literature that was important to each of those domains, identified additional studies that might not have literature associated with them, but making sure to incorporate as much as that has happened in the past and the present in those domains. We built an outline and then created the summary documents. Now, what's important to understand is that we don't feel like this summit is our endpoint. We don't feel like these summaries are final. And we're spending a lot of this meeting in order to augment those summaries. So adding in your expertise, adding in the findings that you think are important and will inform that paths to treatment theme. And then from that, now that we know where we are, starting to think about what we don't know. So the goal for today's breakout session is to identify the gaps in our knowledge. And the gaps at this point could be studies that had never even been thought of before, or findings that we find don't have those validation studies that were needed in order to effectively deploy it in clinical trials. So you'll be separated into your domain-specific working sessions today, creating a list of gaps that then the SPC and the ESC will come together this evening to distill those gaps, bring them together, and find the major themes that each of these gaps sort of cluster in so that we can create tomorrow a working session focused around solutions. And so tomorrow's breakout session, you'll have members from the room that you were in, but you'll have members from every single room. So you'll see that on your name tag. And if anyone in the room does not have a day 1 or day 2 breakout on their name tag, let us know. You do have an assignment. And so at the end of this summit, what we're hoping that we'll have is an extensive list of the key findings in our field, a prioritized list of gaps that we would like to solve, another prioritized list of short-term opportunities, and then longer-term goals that we can then publish and provide to the field and help guide knowledge as a whole. So thank you so much for putting on your exploring hats and helping us do this road mapping effort. I'm going to now pass the baton to my SPC.